Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Draves, and I'm here to introduce and welcome Winifred Gallagher, who is joining us as part of the Microsoft Research Visiting Speaker Series. Winifred is here today to discuss her book, New: Understanding Our Need for Novelty and Change. Adapting to new circumstances is crucial to our survival, but in this day and age, we are assaulted with the deluge of new things daily. Figuring out how to keep from being overwhelmed and using the new to your advantage is the challenge. Winifred Gallagher is a science journalist for numerous publications, including Atlantic Monthly, Rolling Stone, and the New York Times. She is the author of Wrapped, The Power of Place, and Just the Way You Are, which was a New York Times notable book of the year. Please join me in welcoming her back to Microsoft.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for coming out on such a cold afternoon here. I'm from New York City a little bit of the time, and it was 67 degrees last Saturday in New York City, and I'm going tomorrow to LA, and I said, Seattle is always so nice and warm, I'm not going to take an overcoat. So I've been like chattering teeth the whole time I've been here. I also, before I started, just wanted to say a nice thing, because sometimes we could all, die for lack of a nice thing to think about. I was taking a Delta flight here, and as we were waiting interminably for the plane to start taxiing, I picked up the Delta magazine, and they had actually a very interesting feature on individuals who make a difference in the world. Bill Clinton was on the cover, and it was, basically wonderful people who are solving all kinds of horrendous problems all over the world. And the one company they mentioned and got a whole spread was Microsoft as being the stellar company for past and present employees doing good things all over the world. And they gave a lot of different examples of your colleagues. And anyway, hats off to you. That's a very nice distinction. I decided to write this book shortly after I wrote Wrapped, and I was going around on a book tour just like this one, and an interviewer, an NPR person, said, is there anything that you wish you had included in Wrapped that you didn't? And kind of much to my surprise, I blurted out the fact that we're addicted to novelty. And I didn't really know what that meant, and it wasn't the right use of the word addicted, but it actually intrigued me. Like, why is it that we just find new things and change so irresistible, that we're so involved in that? And I started my reporting, which took me all the way back to Africa, where we evolved, and that's how I ended up doing this book. Just a little background. Maybe I don't need these. Maybe I do. Of all species, we are nature's novelty specialists, who are uniquely primed, both biologically and psychologically, to engage with the new and different. The purpose of this neophilia, this affinity for novelty and change, is to help us adapt to, learn about, and create new things that matter. To continue to survive and prosper, we must use this gift for its evolutionary purpose while dismissing novel trivia as distractions. Homo sapiens evolved our genius for engaging with the new and different and embracing change during a long period of extraordinarily volatile environmental upheaval in our native Africa. We basically evolved as a species between 800,000 years ago and 195,000 years ago when we emerged as Homo sapiens. And during that time, Africa was racked with, there would be long periods of monsoons, then long periods of terrible drought. So everything would turn into tropical forest, and then into deserts, and incredibly deep lakes from the monsoon period would dry up to dry holes. It was really cataclysmic climate change. Unlike many other species, including many Homo groups much like us, unlike those folks, we learned to adapt to this unpredictable world and survive conditions that killed off many other species. In fact, our neophilia saved us from extinction 80,000 years ago during a period of particularly catastrophic climate change, which was probably extreme aridity. I didn't realize this. We really almost went out of business 80,000 years ago. The estimates were from some thousands of breeding couples to as few as 600 breeding couples. And everybody on the planet today is descended from that group. We are all Africans. Today's tsunamis, earthquakes, and hurricanes remind us that we still live on a very unpredictable, changeable planet. Perhaps you've noticed that in public places you can't help occasionally glancing at the TV, even if you don't want to, which is really me. You're hardwired to notice novelty and change because the risks and rewards that impact your survival are likelier to come from something new and different in your environment than from the same old, same old. A swerving car, a drop in one of your stocks, a rise in your bad cholesterol. These things are more important than just the same old, driving down the highway, everything's going fine, everybody's going the same speed. Even newborn babies will stare at a novel image for about 41 seconds, then tune out if you keep showing them the picture. Think of these poor little tots. They're only a couple hours old and already they're scientific experiments. At the most basic level, we react to the new with the so-called arousal adaptation response. We get excited by something new, a new job, relationship, the latest wonder phone, a new apartment, and then we get used to it. The arousal adaptation response also explains why inexpensive pleasures, as psychologists call them, things like flowers, fresh flowers, or a great piece of chocolate, are better quality of life investments than comforts, serious expensive things like a new microwave that you soon take for granted. So if you wanted to invest $500 in improving your life, you would be much better off signing up for have a delivery of fresh flowers every week than you would buying a new fridge. As HBO knows, hot entertainments today exploit the arousal adaptation response by exciting you with a novel stimulus, the misunderstood vampire, the emotional robot, the lovable gangster, letting you get used to it, and then upending your expectations so it excites you all over again. So just by the time we're thinking, Tony Soprano's not such a bad guy, he's just like everybody else, he's misunderstood. Then he does something so heinous that you can't believe it. And that's a big part of the kind of entertainments that we have today. Like all behavior, neophilia has minuses and pluses. It spurs us to learn and do new things, explore space, invent technology, make art, create the totally unique personal worlds in each of our heads. But novelty seeking can also be risky. It can jeopardize your safety, fidelity, sobriety, all kinds of good behavior, as well as fueling a chronic restlessness and dissatisfaction, which I think is one of the major issues for us in terms of behavior. I think one good guideline is your novelty seeking is apt to be worthwhile when you use it to go deep into a subject that's important to you. Buddhism, the coral reef, your elderly parents, your sailboat, rather than when you allow it to distract your attention in a broad, shallow way. So you go online and pretty soon you're doing Kim Kardashian and Herman Cain's sex life and ding, 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 ding. And then before you know it, it's an hour and you go, what have I done with this precious hour of my life? Sometimes it's clear that a new thing is either very dangerous, like the saber-toothed tigers that our ancestors had to deal with, or a terrific resource, like coming into a forest clearing and seeing a tree bursting with edible fruit. Other times, though, novelty can pose both possible risks and rewards. A new investment scheme, an off-the-grid vacation in a developing country. Those things can plunge you into what psychologists call an approach avoidance conflict. The uncertainty of the unknown frustrates your powerful need to know what to do next, which creates anxiety. Like individuals, companies and other groups also experience approach avoidance conflicts because they must balance the need to try new things in order to prosper and grow against the risk of failure and potentially angry shareholders and members. I think our country right now, no matter what your politics are, I think we're having a massive approach avoidance conflict. You know, where some people say, well, to get out of the mess we're in, we need to, stimulate and grow and expand. And other people are saying, but wait, look at the deficit. You know, it's a classic approach avoidance conflict. And I think if somebody could figure out how to solve that particular one, they would be in a very good position right now. Maybe it's not possible, but that's a classic approach avoidance conflict. We may be a neophilic species, but as individuals, we respond to novelty in very different ways. Nature ensures these varying reactions because to survive and prosper, a population needs a balance between adventurous individuals who explore for new resources and cautious ones who are alert to the risks involved. I like to picture our ancestors back in Africa, always on the move looking for new resources. They come up against this wild, raging whitewater river, and you have the neophiliacs, the extreme novelty seekers, saying like, wow, look, on the other side of that river, we've never been there, there could be great resources, maybe there's terrific food, it's very exciting, plus it'll be really fun trying to figure out how to go across the whitewater. Then you have the more conservative, neophobic people saying, what, are you crazy? We'll drown if we try to cross that river. We know, at least we know what's going on here, we have no idea what's going to happen to us there. And then you have the majority of the group listening, being informed by both points of view and trying to come up with a consensus. The tendency to approach or avoid the new is the single most important stable behavioral difference among individuals in the same species, period. Nothing reveals your personality more clearly and immediately than your emotional reaction to new things over time and across many situations. It's a very good thing to know about yourself and to know about other people that you work with. Whom you work with. We have a little drink here. Your own personal level of neophilia bespeaks your nurture and your nature, including your genetically influenced balance of the brain chemical dopamine, which motivates us to anticipate and pursue new or pleasurable things to different degrees. Dopamine is about wanting. It's about wanting. It's like dopamine and neophilia are about anticipation and pursuit. About 15% of us are these extreme novelty seekers who I call neophiliacs. They have a very particular dopamine profile. They sometimes live too fast and die too young, but they also explore, experiment, and otherwise push the envelope for the rest of us. An example I use in the book is Story Musgrave, the astronaut. You might remember, although some of you look too young to remember, the picture in the New York Times of Story fixing the Hubble telescope in space. If you've never seen it, look it up because it's just such an amazing picture. He's just out there in his spaceman suit with like kind of a hose coming out of the ship, and he's just up there in space working on the Hubble telescope. I mean, in addition to being a NASA astronaut who's been to the moon, I don't know how many times, all that, he's got a degree in surgery. He's a surgical doctor from Columbia University. He has 5 or 6 other graduate degrees in things like statistics, English literature. He can take apart an airplane and put it back together. He's done over 600 parachute jumps, including free falls for people trying to study human aerodynamics without the parachute, I guess. I mean, this guy has lived 10 lives in one lifetime. And that's a neophiliac. And he will, in the best sense of the word, and he will tell you that he grew up on a big farm in New England, and from the time he was, he says 3 to 5 years old, he was all over that farm. By the time he was 5, he was building his own little boats and going across the river. And this is the mountain men who pioneered the way west. These are the explorers, the neophiliacs. They are likelier than other people to carry variants of the DRD4 dopamine gene. Specifically, it's 7R, 5R, and 2R alleles, which just means genetic variant, which are linked to this tendency to become very strongly aroused by novelty and rewards, adapt to them very quickly, and then be ready for more. So you have a thrill. If somebody like Story jumps out of an airplane the first time, it's thrilling. By the time he does it a couple times, he's saying, I'm over that, now what can we do? And there are all kinds of apparently terrifying things to even think about that you can do, where you have to wait a really long time before you release the chute, or you have to, you jump from a much shorter distance so you don't have a lot of time if something goes wrong with your parachute. There are all kinds of ways to make it what to me would be more terrifying, but to someone like him, more fun. Whether their excitability and low boredom threshold is an advantage or not greatly depends on their environment. It's very good for fixing the Hubble in space, for exploring the ocean floor, for starting up a company. It's not so great if you have to if you're a little boy like that and you have to sit in a classroom all day and staring at like a screen or a teacher, or if you have to sit in a cubicle doing work that you don't really care for. By no means do all carriers of these dopamine gene variants develop into neophiliacs. Impressive Finnish studies, that is from Finland, show that the genetically predisposed children who did develop into neophiliacs were also exposed to certain environmental influences, seemingly both positive and negative ones. They include being raised in affluence, a harsh emotional atmosphere, an urban residence, a hard-drinking father, and a highly educated mother. I think probably the most interesting thing we'll find about why we are the way we are is going to be in these new studies that are very difficult to do, where they're looking at genes and also the environmental interactions, what it takes to actually, it's epigenetics, what it takes to have the gene actually express itself. It's going to be, I think, a really very interesting area of research. At the opposite end of the neophilia spectrum are the 15% of us who are neophobes. These individuals are innately sensitive to the risks that are inherent in new things, which they approach with caution or avoid. However, if there had been more of these careful, cautious sorts on Wall Street, we might have avoided a major recession. The neophiliacs were in charge there for a while on Wall Street. These are sensitive, thoughtful, reflective people. John Milton and Emily Dickinson were not party animals. Bill Clinton is not going to write Paradise Lost. Again, it's not that like neophiliacs are great and neophobes aren't. Like, both have positives and negatives, and we need all sorts. About 70% of the population are moderate neophiles of different degrees, leaning maybe a little bit towards the neophiliac end or the neophobic end, but somewhere there in the very broad middle. Because they're not biologically primed to respond knee-jerk style to new things in an extreme way, they have more time to consider how to react and more behavioral options. So the latest gadget comes out, and I have a friend who the second a new phone or a new whatever comes out, she's there. She has to wait in line for hours. She has to have it right away. That's a different. It's like she almost doesn't have the option. If I say, Nadia, why don't you just wait a minute Have you thought that, like, if we wait 3 months, they'll have a second generation, it'll be better, maybe the price will drop? Like, her instant reaction is go engage with it now. And you can see how if you're talking about sexual partners or the second martini or any number of other things, this tendency can get you in trouble. The majority of people neither want to be scared stiff by too much novelty, especially in careers and close relationships, nor bored stiff by too little, particularly in their intellectual, creative, and recreational pursuits. Taken together, this roughly 1-5-1 ratio of people who generally tend to approach, weigh, or avoid new things benefits the larger group. All of us can tailor our neophilia profiles to improve our quality of life. If you sort of tend towards a neophobic end and your life gets to feel a little bit boring, you can actually cultivate your curiosity. Curiosity is a wonderful, most people I think don't realize, and I don't think I fully realize myself, curiosity is an emotion. It's like awe or sorrow. It's an emotion, and we have different levels of it, and we can cultivate it. Even in little ways, like one psychologist who studies curiosity said, if it's really hard for you to go to a different restaurant, if you always want to go to the same restaurant, at least when you go to the same restaurant, order something different from the menu. Adopting a new interest, attending a night course instead of watching TV, very simple ways. Whatever you become, as one interesting to me psychologist puts it, whatever you become interested in becomes interesting. Whatever you become interested in becomes interesting. And you really can have a more interesting life by becoming more interested in more things, because once you engage, they will become interesting to you. This is Ellen Langer from Harvard. She's in fact, I heard that Jennifer Aniston is making a movie about some of her research. She told me her illustration of this, whatever you're interested in becomes interesting, that her husband, I guess, is a big football fan, and she just couldn't care less about football. And he said, it really kind of bugs me. Can't you just sit down once in a while and watch the game with me? So she said, okay, she did. And she became fascinated by looking at the players' butts. And she said before you knew it, she was saying, well, what about number 62? Who is he? What's, the guy with the big butt and the guy with the little butt? Like, who's fast? Whatever you become interested in becomes interesting. If you lean in the neophiliac direction, and your life can feel scattered and unfocused sometimes, you can use your neophilia like a laser instead of a floodlight. Focus it only on new things of enduring value that really matter to you, and try to identify other things as distractions and eliminate them. Some very exciting research by a terrific cognitive scientist, Art Creamer, shows that all of us can benefit from taking up a challenging new mental or physical activity. It can be, pumping iron at the gym. It can be learning a video game. These activities, and he measures them, with very precise physiological measurements as well as performance tests, actually beefs up your brain. It causes angiogenesis in your brain into old age. It's really neat research, I think. In one study, he brought a bunch of senior citizens into his lab, and he made them learn a video game called Rise of Nations, which I guess is one of the more intellectually acceptable games where you actually solve problems that are in real countries around the world. And of course, a lot of the grandparents were like, oh no, I can't do that. That's my grandkids do that. It's not for me. I'll never learn that. They learned it, and they just had this terrific, all their tests were just so terrific after they forced themselves to learn something really different. And then they got really into it. Oh, look what's going on between England and France. It's fascinating to me that you can actually change your physiology, your neurophysiology, by this kind of activity. Another drink, sorry, I'm kind of jet lagged. Like individuals, societies differ in their approaches to the new and different, and sometimes for biological reasons too. In our nation of immigrants, where innovation is prized, a hefty 25% of Americans, at least of European descent, carry the DR-D4-7R neophiliac gene that is extremely rare in other parts of the world, including traditionally risk-averse conservative China. Very rare there. They have 2R, which is not as high level of novelty seeking gene. It apparently did exist in China at one time, but as the one theory, this is research by Robert Moises at University of California, I think it's San Diego. His lab's theory is that as the culture changed and turned more into a rice planting culture with a Mandarin bureaucracy that were, values of like hard work and hunkering down and sticking to the task and following the program, the 7R people they weren't adaptive in that culture anymore, and they found their ways elsewhere. Social influences also affect our response to novelty. Curiosity was very often considered a vice by the powers that be, popes and kings and establishment figures, asking questions. What business is of yours? It's God said it's that way. That's the end of discussion. Until the 18th century Enlightenment, when asking questions suddenly became a virtue. Today, the economic downturn and high unemployment have fueled a neophobia epidemic on campus, where many professors, this was one of the biggest surprises of my research. I probably talked to 45 or 50 scientists. They're all, not all of them, but most of them are also college professors, because that's how research system often works in our country. Every single person that I can think of made a specific point of saying the kids, as one guy said, they just say, what do I have to do to get an A? Will this be on the test? They won't argue with the teacher. They won't challenge the teacher. They just want to do well. And, this is at an age, neophilia really peaks in the late teens. And by the time you're 60, even if you're Keith Richards, if you read Keith Richards' books, you can see it. By the time you're 60, it's half what it was in your teens. So this I think is like one of the less discussed social problems that's coming out of this long downturn we're in, that young people are resisting the young's traditional role of arguing and fomenting and coming up with new ideas. At the dawn of the 21st century, we human beings who are hardwired to be interested in new things suddenly face an unprecedented deluge of them, from consumer products to bits of information. We now crunch 4 times more data, much of it electronic, than we did just 30 years ago. This is from the How Much Information project at University of California at San Diego. You all probably know about it. It's very interesting research. Boredom still doesn't even exist in much of the third world, but as we grow accustomed to this high level of overstimulation, our boredom threshold gets lower and lower by the day. A while ago, I love this. I should have had a poster made. There was a cell phone company, I think it was Nokia, had an ad with a guy holding a little miracle phone saying, "This is our cure for micro-boredom." Micro-boredom. This is what we used to call waiting in line or waiting your turn. Now it's, God forbid you have to wait for a minute without entertainment. That's micro-boredom. We are constantly seeking exciting bits of novelty, emails, tweets, gadgets. Quickly get used to them and look for the next buzz. For our novelty-seeking species, the information age is the best of times and the worst of times. The Internet's endless store of new data is a huge asset in that it can enhance our neophilic capacity for learning and creativity. I love this British study. It was an MIT researcher, von Hippel, did the study in England. He found that web-connected individuals spent twice as much money inventing new products and tweaking existing ones as did British corporations. especially scientific tools and sports equipment. I mean, that's fantastic in terms of like people are now empowered. I don't like the way my snowshoes work. I'm going to like go online and find out if other people have a better idea for a snowshoe. And then like, let's get some money together and make a better snowshoe without a corporation being involved until, I guess, the very end. It's really fantastic. On the other hand, the torrent of novel trivia, much of it gushing from today's 24/7 media outlets. Remember, we didn't used to have these people. In order to stay in business, they must have crap to spew out 24/7 or they can't stay in business. It's not that the world is so much more an interesting place, it's just that they have to make a living by coming up with something to tell you about. That kind of stuff really distracts us from the legitimate pursuit of learning and creating worthwhile new things. The definitive research has yet to be done, but many serious, very top drawer scientists believe that certain individuals can get hooked on electronic information in a way that has much in common with gambling. Electronic behavior has not been well studied yet. It really should be when you consider how it's like so changed our lives. But gambling has been very well studied. And that's where these, neurologists and psychiatrists, psychiatrists see the connection. And not everybody, but certain people, just the same way that most people can drink alcohol, some people get in trouble. Most people could go to a horse race, some people end up losing the house. So in a similar way, they suspect that most people can control their electronic use. Maybe they need a little discipline, but for certain people, it becomes really like a compulsion. And the example that comes to my mind is when you read about people who literally can't stop gaming. They can't stop gaming to go to school, to eat, to sleep. It becomes, I think, particularly in Asia, there are actually fatalities from people who can't stop gaming. And I think another great example right here is texting while driving. Texting while driving is completely insane. It's insane. The state of Utah, you go to jail for life if you're involved in an accident from texting while driving. There was just a big accident on the East Coast right after Christmas. Some kid sent 11 messages in something like 20 seconds and caused a pileup on an interstate that killed 2 people and seriously injured 30 people. And you say, why are you doing this? And they say, I can't help it. I have to do it. And I'm sure this is not a reliable statistic, but I've read averages that up to, or perhaps more than, who knows, half of all people under 30 are texting behind the wheel. So, that kind of behavior really does suggest addiction, I think. And away from their gadgets, these folks show the telltale symptoms of anxiety, discomfort, and distraction that do accompany other compulsive behavior and addiction. Certain groups are particularly vulnerable to other problems that can be caused by electronic novelty seeking, such as distractedness. School children now spend many hours per day simultaneously juggling different media. We're talking about 5 or 6 hours a day. But this multitasking just means that they're constantly switching from one thing to another. They're not doing 2 things simultaneously. They're doing this and then they're doing that. And while they're doing this, they're missing what's going on with that. This chronic lack of focus totally screws up learning, because if you want to learn something, you must pay attention to it. You must pay attention to it. The reason you can't remember the name of the guy you met at the holiday party even 5 minutes later is because you weren't paying attention to it in the first place. You were like looking over here, or like, what's going on? You weren't paying attention to it. If you do not pay attention to something, you will not remember it, at least not well. The typical office worker also faces tremendous challenges. This is really sad. This is Intel research. He or she gets 3 minutes to focus on a task before interruption from a new stimulus. 3 minutes. Email now average between 50 and 150 per day. That sounds like a full-time job to me. I've talked to scientists who say, I dread going in the morning and looking at my inbox, because they have, not only do they have 150 emails, they all have attachments, must-read attachments to stay up in their profession. A cognitive neuroscientist said, my mentor had, maybe 3 or 4 journals that he had to stay up with. They're monthly journals. He read 3 or 4 a month. I have 25 or 30, and that's not even counting the email. This is a tremendous drain on corporate efficiency and individual well-being. Our electronic novelty generators can cause other psychological problems too. These gadgets supposedly allow us to be anywhere. I have my Wonder Phone, so I can be anywhere. But if I'm walking down the street like this, I'm not even going to see Mount Rainier. I might as well be nowhere. Be anywhere often translates into be nowhere. Because if you're living in a screen, you're not living in the real world. The capacity to be in touch 24/7 also feeds this narcissistic idea that you are indispensable and that everything is urgent. I think there are probably some people in the room that remember before we had cell phones, and people actually, believe it or not, used to be able to go to the airport and get on the plane, and the world didn't stop spinning. They got off the plane, it was fine. They went to the hotel, they got their messages, it was okay. But now, I think somebody could make a very funny little YouTube thing about the behavior of people with their miracle phones on planes. It's like the pilot says, we're cutting you off soon, and they're like, oh my God. Like, do all those people really have relatives in the ER? Are their lives, a lot of my emails, I don't know about you, a lot of my emails are from Cabela's catalog or LL Bean, or my husband saying, can you pick up some hamburger on the way home? I don't know where this sense of urgency and it feeds this kind of narcissism. For most of history, also, this is a biggie, it was hard to remember and easy to forget. That's why we invented writing and painting and all kinds of other stuff. So we could remember important stuff because it was hard. But our vast new capacity for cheap digital memory has reversed that very healthy dynamic. Now, I have 5 kids. If my kid sticks his hiney out on Facebook, then he has to worry about getting a job, and the employer's going to see his butt. And that butt is going to go on forever, eternally. Remember, your mother used to say, forgive and forget? One scientist I talked to gave a great example of this. He had a friend who was eagerly looking forward to a reunion with an old friend she hadn't seen in years. And for some reason, she looked up a bunch of emails, and it reminded her of this bitter quarrel they had had a couple years ago that she had completely forgotten about. So she was enraged all over again. We are meant, most forgetting has nothing to do with Alzheimer's. Forgetting is a very valuable, healthy mental function. Think if you never forgot and you could remember every single parking place you ever parked in here at Microsoft. It was all there. Think of what a nightmare that would be. There would be no room for anything else. Much of the experts' advice on coping with 21st century's endless stores of novelty can be boiled down to 2 words: selectivity and balance. Treat novelty like food. Esther Dyson told me this. Some is nutritious, some is junk. Think about it like food. If you're worried about your appetite for electronic information, try a dieter's trick. In a little notebook, jot down each time you use a gadget and how it makes you feel. Dieters who write down everything they eat and drink all day long with no other plan eat 1/3 less than other people. That's pretty fabulous finding. There's a diet book. There's the world's slimmest diet book, a 1-page diet book saying, write down everything you eat and you will eat 1/3 less. I would just bet that the same thing would be true for a lot of mindless internet surfing. Be particularly vigilant about emails and texts which are cheap to write, copy, and send, but very expensive to receive in terms of your time and attention. One successful executive only responds to emails if he's the sole addressee. He replies immediately, if at all, and then deletes the message instantly. And here's a really important one. Take time out for reverie a bunch of times a day. Just staring into space and allowing yourself to just be. Remember when you used to be able to get in taxi cabs and they didn't have TVs in them? Maybe you don't. In New York, taxi cabs now have TVs mounted on the seat in front of you. There's no escape. It used to be kind of pleasant to get in a taxi cab and you sort of go, oh, what a day, kind of, oh, gather yourself for the next thing, or think like, wow, that opera was great, what a lovely evening. Now you have like, blah, 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 blah. And it's really hard they make the screen deliberately difficult. If you can find the tiny little thing that you have to push, you have to practically pound the driver through the windshield to get it off. Reverie is not just a pretty, funny, old, quaint word made up by poets. It's a real state. It's when it looks like you're just staring into space, okay? Just watching the clouds. It's incredibly important for your brain. You cannot even remember and process stuff that you want to learn unless you allow your brain to just relax and just be. Years ago, I got to interview Dr. Thomas Ware at National Institute of Mental Health. He was the great pioneer, or one of the great pioneers, in seasonal affective disorder, wintertime depression, that kind of thing. And he was very familiar with the behavior of Alaskan Native peoples. And he said, if you go up there in the wintertime, it's almost like kind of a semi-hibernation. People just, it's dark, it's freezing, you really can't get much done. So you just ratchet the activity way down and just kind of sit in reverie. You just kind of sit there and the hours go by and like your friend comes over and sits there with you. Yeah. I mean, think of how hard that would be for the micro-boredom culture to even do that for an hour. I mean, we call it meditation. It used to just be life. You're just rocking on the chair on the porch. These things are really vital for your health and well-being. They are not wastes of time. In short, the best strategy for dealing with novelty and change is to remember neophilia's evolutionary purpose, to help us adapt to, learn about, and create new things that matter, and dismiss the rest as distractions. Thank you. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Yeah?
You mentioned that there was sort of a decrease in neophilia among college-age kids or recent graduates based off of recent or current economic circumstances. If that's true, you should be able to trace it back to the 29 depression or the depression or the recessions in the late 80s late 70s, early 80s, etc.
Well, they haven't been as prolonged. I can't say this is based on research. This is based, though, on just a spectacular number of college professors that I've talked to. They just went out, and some of them got really very heated about it. Their opinions were divided. Some said it's because the baby boom raised these kids to think that they're the center of the world and to feel very entitled, and that they have to have A's, and they kill themselves if they don't go to Harvard, or like that. Some people think it's that. Some people think it's like real fear out there. My babies are twins who will be 23 on Saturday. And we practically did a war dance when my son got a job. He's the only one of his friends just out of college who got a job. And he was kind of a dodgy student, certainly till he got to high school. We used to think, gee, is he going to be, graduate from high school, graduate from college? He actually got a job. And this was like a big reason for celebration. And I went to the gym and I said to the other women in the class, I said, girls, my son got a job. Another woman said to me, you're a New York Times statistic. So I think we don't realize the pressure the kids, certainly people my age, if you went to college, you had a job. There wasn't even a question. It wasn't even a question. You had a job and you could own your own home. Not anymore. Not anymore. So I'm not trying to make that like a hard-edged scientific finding. I'm just passing on a very strong reflection from, an awful lot of professors I talked to. Yeah?
I'm wondering if you could expand a little bit more on the, causal correlation between the neophilia gene and the addiction gene. You made that comparison a number, or the tendency to addiction. You made that comparison a number of times. It seems counterintuitive because to be addicted to something means you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. So how does that balance with?
This is a very tricky area. Unfortunately, the way behavioral science research is set up in this country, the government pays for a lot of it, various levels of government. I mean, if you've ever been to Washington, to see Rockville, Maryland, is just like a vast sea of places where people are studying why people smoke cigarettes even though we know it's terrible for you. And the way you get government grants is to fix something that's broken. So if somebody wants to study novelty seeking, they get no one is going to give in government going to give them a grant to find out why Story Musgrave wants to fix the Hubble telescope. They have to do research to find out why novelty seekers engage more in risky sex or substance abuse. So in a way, I don't really even trust those figures, but it is true that neophiliacs would have higher levels of substance abuse, risky sex, risk-taking activities, higher than average levels. Although, as Robert Cloninger, who's probably, I think, the wisest and most illustrious psychiatrist in America at University of Washington Medical School, says that, and he studied this very intently, that neophiliac behavior is not associated with pathology unless the person has other character issues going on. Like if Story Musgrave had been raised by, he actually came from kind of a privileged family, although he did drop out of prep school to join the Marines. But he, if Story Musgrave had grown up in an inner city world with a single mother who had drug problems and nobody was looking out for what was going on with little Story and making him go to school and so forth, that same character can become very troubled. So it's psychologists who study personality often say the cop and the robber are the same person, they just had different upbringings. So I think, this is sort of a long way of answering your question. Yes, neophiliacs do have a higher incidence of substance abuse and that kind of risk-taking behavior. But I think a lot more work needs to be done to tease apart the elements of that. And I think we shortchange what's good about these people. One of my kids, the one who got the job actually, had ADHD. And Robert Moises, a terrific researcher who studied these kids, says that he can't believe the number of the amount of mail he gets from sort of, as he says, entrepreneurial Silicon Valley types who say, I knew there was nothing wrong with me. I just hated school because they made me sit still all the time, and now I'm doing great. These are kids who the kids he studied, have the DRD47R allele, and as long as they are in a supportive environment where they get the right kind of education, a bunch of he and his colleagues call them super kids. So it's a very tricky area, and I think we're too quick in this culture now where we say everybody's got to sit in front of a screen all day, and if you're really good at sitting in front of a screen for 14 or 15 hours, hey, but that wasn't always the way it was. We also need people who don't want to sit in front of a screen all day, who want to go up and fix the Hubble telescope. So I think we have to try to figure this out in a more sophisticated way than we have. Yeah.
I have an online question. Are there some people who are neophiliacs about some things, but neophobes in other areas?
Yeah. Well, that would basically be somebody in the middle 70% there, with different orientations in different ways. For example, I would say that I just because it's a personal example. My husband is a full tilt neophiliac. The more hair raising the ski run, the better. If you can go to one club, why not go to 2 or 3 clubs? Whatever it is, he likes to keep it coming, right? I am definitely not like that in the physical risk-taking category, but I have a trait I would score high in a trait that contributes to this behavior called openness to experience. It means I like to travel, I like to go to crazy places, I like to meet interesting people, I like to do different stuff, like that kind of thing. And there's some research that suggests that women with neophiliac tendencies tend to go more in that openness to experience direction. You don't see too many female big game hunters and story musk. Not that you can't, not that it's not possible. It's just there seem to be different ways that different people, and maybe even different groups of people, the kind of novelty they're attracted to. Yeah.
You mentioned before that there's a difference in the genetic material between Europeans and Chinese people, or Asian people in general, but you mentioned specifically that the Chinese culture seems to have gotten rid of that over time.
No one really knows why. They know that
in such short time. Like, let's say the Chinese culture is 5,000-6,000 years old. We've been not hunter-gatherers for 11,000 years, and now the gene is gone.
It's very rare in China, very rare. But 2R, which is related, is not so rare.
So are we in the States, now that we're encouraging a non-risky behavior in the schools, which is proven by the college professors will say
it's a great question.
Are we doing this the same thing now?
It's a great question. Here's the scenario that I heard. In Africa, we're all in Africa, and most people had the ancestral 4R, the 4 DRD4, that allele, then that gene. Then around between 50 and 40,000 years ago, we had huge migrations from Africa. Then there's a big debate about why. But some scientists think that these novelty-seeking genes arose then. And what they can study now is that the people who stayed closest to Africa, just closest to where we evolved in Africa, still have the high percentage of the ancestral gene. But the people who went farthest, the people who have the highest of all incidence of the 7R allele are the South American Indians of the Amazon basin, who went the farthest from Africa. So they're fascinating studies, and I don't think, there are theories about why. I don't think anybody really knows. But certainly different cultures, this is called biohistory, this is a new field of biohistory. Different cultures are different, not just for social reasons, is the implication. And that can sound sort of politically incorrect, but on the other hand, we might say, one person might say, on vacation, I love to go to Scandinavia, I just love the whole thing there, it's so, neat and progressive and future, blah, blah, blah. And someone else is saying, that's not for me, I want to go to Italy, where it's like the opposite of Scandinavia. There are reasons for these things that aren't just, we're not made of spun glass. We are biological creatures, and I think to me it's kind of what makes us so interesting, that there are so many different kinds of us. Yeah.
Are there any differences that you know of that are dependent on how the body responds to new stimuli, whether it's expected versus unexpected? So.
Well, if it's expected, it can't be new.
Well, like if you seek out the stimuli, would your body respond differently than if you just...
Well, you wouldn't respond. The simplest of the novelty emotions is surprise. And surprise is a very interesting emotion because a newborn has exactly the same surprise reaction as a grown-up. It is an emotion, kind of. And there's not much we can do. If somebody comes up behind you and pops a balloon, you're going to be surprised. You are going to elicit that reaction. That is different from actively seeking and pursuing novelty, which is, more of a dopaminergic wanting. Like it would be like, I want somebody to come and pop the balloon behind me. Jerry Kagan, a wonderful researcher at Harvard, did this great groundbreaking work on child and infant temperament for many years at Harvard. And he studied little kids, babies and toddlers, and he would subject them to not stressful forms of novelty, but just like a strange person or a funny, maybe a little bitter taste or a noise or something like that. And right from the beginning, there were some kids, when you pop the balloon, the kid goes, wow, kind of cool. And other kids are like, wah! So this is what I was saying earlier. Your characteristic approach to new stimuli over time and in many situations is a very deep, abiding part of who you are and really worth understanding. Mm-hmm.
How did you get into this kind of writing on psychology and behavior?
It's because I worked at, if some of you remember, back in the 80s, Time Incorporated started a science magazine called Discover. And I worked on the first issues of Discover. And I just became fascinated with the question of why are we the way we are and what can we do about it. And I kind of couldn't believe that Time Inc. then, although they wouldn't now, would just let me get on an airplane and go and talk to all kinds of fascinating people about it and come back and write what I found out, and they would pay me money for it. It seemed like a really great plan. Nowadays, I actually remember a Time editor saying to me, don't just go reading books and talking to people on the phone. I want you to go somewhere and do something. Now they would be like, oh my God, if you put in a voucher for, like a $5 cab ride, they'd probably have a nervous breakdown. It's just so different now. We have to do everything online. Yeah.
So do you think there could be a healthy state of information deluge? I mean, but some people I know are productive and happy with.
Yeah, if it works for you, because we have all different levels of acceptable stimuli. For Emily Dickinson, probably not. But for Bill Clinton, probably. I think, it's a matter of figuring out your type and what works for you. There's no good or bad.
The interesting thing is that people are being forced into types they're not used to, right? Like,
sure.
The expectation you have to check your email even if you don't want to check your email. Right?
That's right. And some of the tension that we're under, it's not all us driving like a kind of addiction to this stuff. We all are now forced. As soon as we got the Wonder phones, goodbye to remember the distinction? Probably some of you don't because you're too young. There used to be a real distinction between the office and the home. You used to, sign out for the weekend, and you actually couldn't do your work at home because you didn't have the stuff. And computers, and now, technically, you could work all day long, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Where do you draw the line? It's a big change. I mean, we come from a species that until 100 years ago, we woke up when the sun was up, we milled around and did whatever, and when the sun went down, we went to sleep. That's what we did. And now we can do anything all the time, wherever we are. There are benefits to that, but I suggest to you there are also costs. So it's up to us individually, because the culture doesn't really protect us anymore. The culture doesn't say, you've got to take Sunday off or you will go to hell. That doesn't happen anymore for most of us. But maybe it was better, actually, when people thought that, because then they took Sunday off. I don't know. Well, anyway, it's really, really fun to be with you this afternoon. And thank you so much for coming.